Okay. Well, I hope you had a good break and you're refreshed. We have completed a quarter of the conference, our workshop, and we went over for the last 2 months how our co-facilitators and your teachers have been doing these 29 activities and seeing how it's affecting their time management. Not just the quantity of it, but the quality of it too. One very useful thing which has evidence in not only in well-being but also in time management, the quality of time management, is how much compassion we feel for ourselves before we can even say I was kind to someone else, before we can even say I want to have compassion for others. How much compassion do we have for our own self? Let's do a quick short meditation on compassion for self. This is in your attachments. You have it. You can do it once a week, once a day, as many times you want. But the idea is that this sets you on the path of looking at your time as valuable. And as you listen to it, I want you to focus on how the meditation itself has a sense of time built into it. Otherwise, you won't find compassion in your own self. Okay, so let's do that, and then we will go on to your teachers again.
We're going to do a visualization meditation so you can be compassionate toward yourself. I invite you to be in a comfortable position. So don't do this if you need to be alert, like if you're driving. Rest your hands comfortably and close your eyes. Now bring your attention to the sensations of your in-breath and your out-breath. Inhale and exhale. And if at any point it becomes too difficult, or if you notice difficult emotions arise, please feel free to return to the awareness of your breath. Our breath is always with us, each moment of our lives, and it's a safe place to return to. Now imagine yourself when you were a newborn, new to this world. How small and defenseless you were. This baby you is perfect, with infinite potential. Please take a moment to send yourself good wishes full of kindness and love. Say to this baby, may I be happy. May I be full of love. May I experience peace. May I be free from suffering. May I live life to the fullest extent. Take a moment now to notice how this feels in your mind and body. If any resistance or judgment arise, please notice these reactions and come back to this ever-present sensation of your breath. Now I invite you to call to mind the image of yourself as a 16-year-old. See what you love about yourself when you are 16. Please take a moment to send this version of yourself wholesome good wishes, full of kindness and love. Tell your 16-year-old self, may I be happy, may I be full of love, may I experience peace, may I be free from suffering, may I live life to the fullest extent. Take a moment now to notice how this feels in your mind and body. Notice the sensation of your in breath and your out breath. Take a moment to place one hand on your stomach. What sensations do you notice? Can you feel simultaneously the rise and fall of your chest and stomach? Now I invite you to think how you are now, today, at this very moment. See what you love about yourself now. And take a moment to send this version of yourself wholesome good wishes, full of kindness and love. Tell yourself, may I be happy. May I be full of love. May I experience peace. May I be free from suffering. May I live life to the fullest extent. Take a moment now to notice how this feels in your mind and body. Notice the sensation of your in breath and out breath. Now let's imagine how you will be in 10 years from now. What will you love about yourself 10 years from now? Please take a moment to send this version of yourself wholesome good wishes, full of kindness and love. May I be happy. May I be full of love. May I experience peace. May I be free from suffering. May I live life to the fullest extent. Take a moment now to notice how this feels in your mind and body. Notice the sensation of your in breath and out breath. Now, when you ever need compassion, when you are being hard on yourself, when you have the need to be kind to yourself, you can sit, close your eyes, focus on your breath, rest your hands comfortably, and send yourself these wishes of well-being and happiness, always and ever.
Okay, welcome back. And please use chat if you have any feelings, thoughts to share. This is a meditation focused to be kind to yourself. So you can always improve the quality of your life, quality of the time you spend in your life. So in a way, it has application in time management in a slightly different way than how we think about objective time management. Okay, now back to our teachers. Our next teacher is Dr. Don Morris. He is a familiar face to pretty much all of you. He's a past president of American Osteopathic College of Ophthalmology and Otolaryngology and Head and Neck Surgery. And he is what happened? Yeah, and he's currently a board member of Pennsylvania Academy of Ophthalmology. He's a counselor to American Academy of Ophthalmology. He resides and practices in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He enjoys baking and cooking. Last year, he was telling me about chocolate babka recipe that he had mastered. And right now, he is baking a mix of white and dark chocolate chip cookies and made in a cupcake with the cupcake tin with cupcake wrappers. Man, and now it may sound funny, but he claims that it's wholeheartedly approved by family, nieces, and nephews everywhere. He feels his best and most important accomplishments are being a husband and a father. So, Dr. Morris, take it away. It's yours.
Well, thank you, Dr. Sen. Now that I'm all relaxed from the meditation, I'm supposed to go ahead and start and do my talk.
We all are relaxed.
So I just wanted to say, first of all, Libby's talk was fantastic. That was wonderful. And interestingly enough, if you look at my background, this is sunset in Maui. And it was just such a place that I felt there was so much peace and so peaceful that it's what I started using as my background. So now there's definitely something to Maui. Zoom is kind of an interesting, it really is an interesting way to present, and we all have different ways that we present. And I find that I tend to present better in a written word. So my presentation is more like an article. But it's hopefully, it's something that was definitely a wonderful journey for me, and something that was interesting, and I learned a lot. So I'm going to start off by going over the beginning lyrics of a song by Billy Joel. And the song is titled Summer in Highland Falls. And I don't know how many of you have actually heard this. But the lyrics start, they say that these are not the best of times, but they're the only times I've ever known. And I believe there is a time for meditation in cathedrals of our own. Now I've seen that sad surrender in my lover's eyes, but I can only stand apart and sympathize. For we are always what our situations hand us, either sadness or euphoria. Now, I first heard this song when I was in high school, and it had so much meaning for me then. It talks about living in the times as they exist, not wishing for other times. It talks about choices of happiness, euphoria, or sadness, and how we deal with life situations. It talks about our own types of meditations. And it was, like I said, it was meaningful to me in the past, and it's still meaningful to me now. And it speaks to me about time. So I thought it was an appropriate way to start this talk. And if you do ever get a chance to listen to it, like I said, I find a lot of meaning in it, and I don't know if any of you will, but it's definitely an interesting song. So speaking of songs, there are so many songs about time. To name a few, and I'm sure the choices that I name are going to date me, but there's Time by Pink Floyd, Time After Time by Cyndi Lauper, If I Could Turn Back Time by Cher, Does Anyone Really Know What Time It Is? Chicago, Too Much Time on My Hands by Stick, Back in Time, Huey Lewis and the News, The Time Warp from the Rocky Horror Picture Show, Time in a Bottle by Jim Croce, and there are so many other more songs about time. So time is a constant in our lives, and it's always there consciously or unconsciously running our days and our nights. And describing it as a constant is kind of funny, as the time actually moves forward, so it's anything but constant. But as you can see by the song lyrics and song titles, it's something we all think about. It can be something to love, to fear, to hate, to try to control, to capture, or one of a million other possibilities. So having a seminar on time management to me is a bit of a misnomer, because in my opinion, it's impossible to manage time. Time moves forward no matter what we do with it. However, how we make use of our time can be managed, and we want to make the best use of the time that we have, because it's limited and we never know when it's going to end. I tend to be a relatively well-organized person, and when I thought about a time management mid-year, I didn't volunteer immediately to be a presenter because I didn't feel that I had any major issues with how I manage and spend my time. I get my projects done, and I'm usually well prepared in advance for meetings and presentations. I am on time or early for office hours and surgeries and appointments, and I have a regimen on how I spend my daily time, and all of that seems to work for me. So I didn't really feel I had a whole lot to learn about time or myself or how they mesh. I have to say, I really got that wrong because there was a lot to learn. This talk isn't really about organization or being more efficient, but it's about a journey about how I use my time in ways that are unproductive and in some cases emotionally harmful to me. I'll also talk about how some of the projects have helped me use my time in fantastically positive ways. So bear with me as this talk does tend to meander, but hopefully it will ultimately be useful in the end. And in a way, it ends up, just like Libby said, being a cross between time management and physician wellness. Like last year's mid-year, we started the time management project by doing a strengths assessment. And I'm one of the presenters who shared last year and is again presenting this year. It's interesting that my strengths changed from last year to this year. Last year, my number one strength was fairness, followed by teamwork, leadership, prudence, and honesty. This year, my number one strength was perseverance, followed by leadership, honesty, fairness, and judgment. So one of my first tasks was to think about why have my strengths shifted, and does that actually mean anything? Well, why have my strengths shifted? And it's been an interesting and in lots of respects, difficult year for me. And that's probably changed my perspective and my strengths. This is the year that the Pittsburgh synagogue shooter trial happened. Some of you who know me may know that my wife worked at the Tree of Life synagogue where the shooting happened. And thankfully we were away that weekend. But we had just been to a bat mitzvah there the week before it happened. And we've been with so many good friends and so much family. And so the timing is really a bit too close for comfort and definitely makes us think. My wife knew most of the people murdered, and I knew some of them. With this all over the news again this year, it's certainly been up front in my life and my thoughts. And I think being able to continue with our daily lives while still being affected by all of this has required perseverance. Another thing different for this year is that COVID, which by no means has gone away, feels a bit less all-encompassing. People are traveling again, we're masking less, we're going to the movies and eating out again. Most of us have had COVID at least once by now, so it's a lot less of a boogeyman than it was. In a way, it feels like a winding down of a bad period of our lives, but something that we've all had to persevere through. And I'm not suggesting it can't get bad again. As a matter of fact, my daughter this morning sent me her positive COVID test. But it's just a known now instead of an unknown. We also made some big changes at work into a new working system that I've been talking about for years, and my partners weren't that significantly interested in change. We've had our ups and downs in this working system as we got used to it. And in the end, it'll make a huge difference in our efficiency and ability to work, but it's definitely taking dealing with staff complaints and all of our partner complaints to an anticipated, but not particularly fun-filled level. So it's taken perseverance to get this far, and it's going to take it to continue. These and more may be the reasons for the shifting of my strengths. The next question is, does it mean anything that my strengths have shifted? In general, as I said last year, I consider myself a relatively happy person. But with the above things going on this year, I do find myself falling into some melancholy moods that have made me more aware of my grudges and my resentments. So what does any of this have to do with time management and perseverance? Well, I will get there, and hopefully it'll become more obvious as I move along in the presentation. Some of my projects have shown me that maybe perseverance can be a double-edged sword. Some of my projects have been a great use of my time, and some of my projects have shown me that these grudges and resentments are a colossal waste of my time and energy. And there it is. How I use my time is as important as getting things done on time or being prepared for a meeting. This is time management, and by using my time better, it will hopefully make me a happier person. And again, I'm not that unhappy to start with, but even happier. We started with our strengths assessment, which I just talked about. We then went on to watching videos and reading articles about time and relationships and how many of these things were interwoven. From the readings, one take-home message for me that I thought maybe we could use for ourselves and our staff at some point in the future was how to help people love their jobs. And it turns out that if you can find what part of their job people love and have them do it at least 20% of the time, they have a much more positive outlook on what they do. And I thought to myself, it'd be amazing if we could get our staff to have more positive outlooks on their jobs. The tricky part is how to find out what they love and what will work in a medical practice. As an employer or leader, some things we can do with our staff are to have weekly meetings asking what they loved about the last week, what they loathed about the last week, what are their priorities, and what can we do to help? And I think that's a great idea. And if I show perseverance, maybe it's something I can get going over the next few weeks. Over the next few years. I think in a better medical world with good reimbursement and plenty of time, this would be a great system to implement now. But in the current medical world, this may be unattainable. In this world, we need our staff to do what we need to do for them to make us more efficient, and sometimes that may not be in coordination with what they love. From the videos, my favorite take-home message was that one choice can make people happy, having a few choices can make them really happy, and having too many choices can make them really unhappy. So if you think about buying coffee, if there's only one choice, there's no issue with making up your mind. If there are a few choices, you can find something you like. If there are 250 choices, no matter what you choose, you're going to be unhappy because no matter which coffee you choose, you'll wind up feeling like there was a better choice that you could have made. In a way, this helps me with some regrets I have in choices that I've made. I have to realize that you make the best choices you have with the information available to you at that time, and that you have to realize that no matter what choice you make, it was the right choice. If there was only one choice, you can live with it. If it were one of a few choices, you made a decision that made you pretty happy. But if you had a lot of choices, it may always feel like there was a better one I should have made. And in reality, that's just not true. You do the best you can with the information that you have. Another and the most important take-home message from the videos was the one specific video talking about the Harvard study. And this video was a study that followed some humans over their lifetimes and tried to determine what made them the happiest. And it turns out that money and success were not the top things to make them happy, but good relationships were the key to a longer and happier life. And that's something for all of us to aspire to. From here, we moved on to the projects that were ostensibly about time management. And I say ostensibly because for me, they took me in many directions other than efficiency or time management. The projects I picked were the weekly mortal notch. Number 2, bring energized meaning to optimize your days. 3 was to send 2 to beat 1. 4 was movie night gym. 5 was one breath meditation. And 6 was a new project. How do I interpret the phrase, if I'm not for myself, then who will be for me? So the weekly mortal notch. In this project, we're asked to calculate how many weeks we have left in our lives. And obviously this is an estimation, but it did help to give me some clarity of what happens and what happens during my week and what has meaning in a week of my life. And I'll start by noting it's a bit disconcerting to see the estimated weeks put out in such a raw number this way. It also tells me that with any luck, I have a good amount of time left. The big impact it made on me is to realize that, well, I think I have a good amount of time left. You never really know what's ahead of you. There could be early passing, cancer, dementia, etc. And if I have things I really want to do, I should be thinking of how to do them now. The realization this brought to me is that even though expressing love is not my highest strength, I need to make sure to let those whom I love and those who are important to me know how much I love them and how important they are to me. And this is huge to me. Lots of you probably have already considered this, and I have too, but this brought it home to me in a numerical and substantial form. I do consider this project a countdown of sorts, and I find that I don't like the word countdown. It seems so final, and that this project is a lot more than that. So on a side tangent, I find that I prefer following my age and watching the number going up. This means a life well lived and continuing. And I know that sounds different than the way most people think of age. Most people don't like seeing the number go up. But I did have cancer at age 39. And thankfully, it was not a cancer that was then or is likely in the future to come back and kill me. But it still makes me appreciate that I'm still here and experiencing life. Another tangent from this project that brought up all sorts of thoughts and feelings were about my dad. He passed away about 16 years ago and was unfortunately sick and had dementia for some years prior to that. I look at my children now and I think how proud he would have been of them. And I'm sorry that he didn't get to really know them. I'm also sad for myself in that I missed out being able to spend time with him and talk with him and get his advice at this stage of my life. I feel sad that I didn't get to know him the way many people get to know their fathers. So all of this did inspire me to make sure to let the people I love in my life know how much I love and cherish them and how proud I am of them. And I was recently able to spend time with each of my children alone and tell them exactly this. I was able to tell them about the relationship with my father and how I'm so happy to be here for them and why it makes me so sad about my own dad. I think even though love was not one of my higher strengths, this project helped me to feel and understand it better. And if I took the strengths assessment again now, it's very possible that I'd see another shift, with love being the highest or significantly higher. This project was truly a good use of my time and a big plus for a mid-year on time management. Project 2 was to bring energized meaning to optimize my day. And this is the project where we had 4 options to pick from to either create or remove things in our lives. The options were things requiring high energy but would give high reward, things requiring high energy but give low reward, things requiring low energy that give high reward, or things that require low energy but give low reward. And I'm not 100% sure I did this project completely correctly, but the way it worked out is it made me think through a lot of things and brought up some unexpected realizations. For this project, I thought of something in my life that I'd like to give up that does take high energy and gives low to no reward. So as I noted before, I do tend to hold grudges and resentments, and I still hold a grudge with someone whom I thought was a friend. And again, obviously we all have our own spin on the way things occur, but I don't feel that we may have been the friends I thought we were over the 15 plus years that we knew each other. Anyway, I do harbor a grudge and resentment towards this person, which takes too much energy and time for me and gives me no benefit. So I'm trying to let it go, but I find that's easier said than done. And I truly understand intellectually that this is a pure waste of my time and energy, but I don't know how to emotionally let grudges or resentments go. Dr. Singh said something really interesting to me. He said that grudges and resentments are like drinking poison and hoping someone else gets sick from it. And when you think about it, that's so true. Grudges and resentment poison you and make no difference to the person you resent or harbor a grudge for. This was a hard one for me, and I wasn't sure how I knew to go about doing this. So this is when Dr. Singh suggested the compassion meditations. And we did the compassion meditation towards ourselves, the one we just did before I started my lecture. And I find that these are nice meditations and are something that I've repeated over time to see if it helps me decrease the energy and time I spend on holding a grudge or resentment. The problem for me is still trying to figure out how to forgive and move on from these emotionally. I redid the compassion meditation towards myself and towards others. And as I tried the compassion meditation towards me, I realized that I have a hard time giving myself compassion to my current stage. And I think that's because the current me is where I am today, secondary decisions that I've made in my lifetime. And I think, and it's not a rational thought, but I still think it, is that if I'd made better decisions then, some of my issues today would not exist. And these issues that exist today then are purely my fault for making the wrong choices. And again, the way this meditation works is to picture yourself as a baby, a teen, as you are now and in the future. And you think back and give compassion and love to yourself at the stage of your life. And I had a hard time giving compassion to myself the way I am now. And I know that there have been many struggles to overcome in my life, just as there have been for all of us. And I've had to struggle with friendships, slurs, and even well-meaning criticisms about teenage angst, religion, social awkwardness, and even weight. I also sometimes consider myself somewhat of a coward for staying in jobs or situations or friendships that I probably should have left. This is where perseverance may be a double-edged sword. I have pride in myself for getting through these things, but if I'd not persevered and changed jobs or left situations, would I have been happier or not felt a coward for staying in them? Fortunately, these situations don't have anything to do with my love for my family, and I've made some of these decisions for the good of my family. But I do wonder if they were possibly not for my own good. And that's the double-edged sword of perseverance. In terms of me feeling compassion or forgiveness to others, maybe part of the reason I hold grudges and resentments is that I don't know how, or even if I have to forgive myself for the above issues. The question this creates for me is that if I hold myself to such a high standard that I don't know how to forgive myself, how would I know how to forgive others? This also goes back to happiness and choices. You have to make the best decision you can for yourself and your family at the time. And when you look back and realize there were a lot of other choices, of course you're going to think one of the other choices would have been better. But that's really not the reality of things, and that's something that I need to remind myself and know. So this is the most important and hardest of the projects that I've taken on, and I did have a chance to discuss all of the above with Dr. Singh. From that discussion, I do realize I'm somewhat of a pessimist based on the criteria that I have a hard time giving myself credit when good things happen or if I create good things. But I don't have a hard time assigning blame to myself for bad things that happen, even when they're not under my control. From this conversation, I also realized that I have an overriding sense that as the main economic earner in my family, I'm constantly aware that the lifestyle of my family and their college careers and happiness are squarely my responsibility, whether that's true or not. There is nothing wrong with this, but it does wear me down at times. From my conversation with Dr. Singh, I realized that I also need to understand that there's a concept of good selfishness that I need to embrace. I do need to take credit for good things. I need to not feel guilty if I take more days off in a year than normal for an extended vacation. I need to put less pressure on myself if possible. While being the economic family engine is an important part of who I am, I need to do some things for me. And that way I'll be better able to provide for others without feeling resentment or guilt. And hopefully, as I learn to do these things, I will be able to truly let go of the grudges and resentment and find more inner lightness, peace, and less pressure. So those two projects were really the heaviest of the projects that I did. The third project was send two to beat one. And in this project, we used two strengths to tackle a problem. The two strengths that I chose to use are perseverance and leadership. And as a board member for the Pennsylvania Academy of Ophthalmology, one of my responsibilities is legislative. And that means that it's important to meet with both state and national senators and congressional representatives of both parties. And in general, this is one of my least favorite parts of leadership, and it's what I procrastinate doing, and that's my problem. I find it hard to sit and talk with someone, have them agree with everything that I'm saying and stating they understand, all the while knowing that they're doing the same thing with my opposition, which in this case would be the optometric lobby. I also know that many times they're just waiting for a contribution. I find it frustrating that money seems to be more important than principle. They keep telling us they need to hear from us, but it's the money that talks. As I know this is important for ophthalmology and medicine in general, I need to be a leader and persevere and set up these meetings. So my process was to get myself in motion and call to schedule them. I also need to review and take notes of the talking points and again, try to believe that they're listening to me. So how did this work out? Well, I did manage to call one of the representatives. I set in motion scheduling a meeting, and I did manage to get the meeting set up. But I find that that really took a lot of energy to get me going, or a lot of energy for me to get it going. I know for others it's not a big deal, but for me it's tough, and it's likely going to continue to be a weakness. So I may have to recognize that I don't have the time to set these in motion myself, and I will need to depend upon others to help me. And that would be using teamwork, which is another strength along with leadership and perseverance. So in this case, it may take three to beat one. The next project was Movie Night Gym, and I also like movies, and this was a great project. So it was to pick movies that show the protagonist having my strengths and see how to use them. I picked Pride of the Yankees for perseverance, and this is the Lou Gehrig story. And I have to say, this is a fantastic movie, and I highly recommend it. If you haven't seen it, it's a great movie. Lou Gehrig had much that he had to overcome to become one of the greatest baseball players of all time. He had to show perseverance to overcome being from a working class family and to overcome the snobs who looked down at his class. He had to overcome tripping and falling flat on his first trip out to hit and being beamed in the head on his first run to base. He had to overcome his mother's desire for him to be an engineer and overcome her iron will to run his and his wife's lives. He had to show perseverance in dealing with all of this. And he always had in his mind he would be the Lou Gehrig that he wanted to be. Some fantastic lines from this movie are, "You can't be what someone else wants you to be. People have to live their own lives. No one can live it for you." These things sum up how he lived a successful life. And I wanted to bring all this across before bringing up what we all know about Lou Gehrig, because he was complex enough that his life was not only the one famous line that we all know, which is, "I consider myself as the luckiest man on the face of the earth." So obviously he had to deal with his illness, ALS. But to feel he was the luckiest man on the face of the earth, while having a terminal disease that was robbing him of the thing he loved doing, takes perseverance. As noted in my previous projects, perseverance is something I'm definitely familiar with. Watching Lou Gehrig persevere again made me think of my own life and what I've gone through. I understand perseverance, and I'm amazed at the outlook and attitude that Lou Gehrig brought to his life that kept him happy and grounded and gave him the ability to feel he was the luckiest man on the face of the earth, even when he had to give up baseball and face his own mortality. Per Dr. Singh's suggestion, I also picked a movie showing forgiveness, since I seem to have a harder time with forgiveness. I watched the movie The Descendants, and this may be the only George Clooney movie that no one's ever heard of. It was an interesting look at a family's dysfunction. The father was so caught up in his law practice that he didn't have a good relationship with or know his two daughters. His wife was having an affair and then was in an accident which left her in a coma from which she would never awaken and she would pass away. The movie was about how he comes to grip with these issues and is able to forgive his wife in the end and let her go in peace. He was able to reconcile with his daughters and become a part of their lives. All of this is able to give him inner peace. There's more going on in the movie, but this was the main thrust that I saw. I looked at this, and intellectually I can conceptualize that it's cathartic for him to be able to forgive his wife. Emotionally, I find it hard to understand how he can let go of the hurt. How does that not bubble back at him at times and haunt him? It must be wonderful to cleanse himself of the resentment and grudges he's carrying, but I can't figure out how he manages it emotionally. And maybe it really is a question of mind over heart. If he truly believes in forgiveness, maybe his heart will eventually be convinced. This movie was set with the beauty of Hawaii as the background, and it was interesting to see the dichotomy of the beauty of the islands contrasting with the darkness of the story. It was an interesting movie, and it does show me how forgiveness can be cathartic and let people move on. So for myself, I still have the issue of how to emotionally let go, but I continue to work on that. The next project was one breath meditation, and that again means taking a moment or two to ground yourself before moving on to the next place or task. And I did this for some time after the mid-year last year and felt it to be very calming. But then things got so busy that I'd forget to do it. And this is something that I do find calming and centering, and I'm not sure why I stopped. I did restart it for this project, and I've been doing this at lunch and sometimes again when I get home. And it does help to recenter me and help me move into another part of the day. I find that I look forward to this, but I can still miss it when I'm stressed and busy. Since it's really such a nice separation of things when I can do it, it's something that I actually need to make sure that I do and make a habit so that if I miss it, I'll feel that I miss it and actually force myself to do it. And this again is a wonderful tip about managing my time and being able to feel ready and have energy for the next part of the day. My last project was a project that came up after talking with Dr. Singh. What does the phrase, if I'm not for myself, then who will be for me, mean? And in Hebrew, it's im ena nili mili. For this phrase, to me, it means understanding that to be there for others, you have to be in the right frame of mind and do what you need to do to work on yourself. Specifically for me, this means working out how to forgive and to actually feel it and let go of the emotional weight that comes with anger and grudges and resentments. It means doing things for myself and understanding the concept of good selfishness. It means trying to reconcile providing for my family and others with providing for myself. It means taking the time to visit with my brothers and my mother. It means taking the time to visit with the children, even when the timing doesn't work out with my wife. It means taking the time off without feeling guilty that I'm not providing my family. It also means not feeling resentment towards others when they don't treat me the way I would treat them. As part of this project, I talked with my family about what the phrase meant to them. So one of my family members felt that for him, the phrase meant self-noting and self-awareness. His comment was that he can't necessarily control self-deprecating thoughts or emotions, but that he works on noting them and letting himself know they're just emotions and self-talk. And while they're part of him, they're not what's really him. And by assigning them as just certain thoughts at certain times, he realizes they're not they're not the entirety of his life. Then these things fall back into place as little things to watch for, but they're not the makeup of his life. And that's what the phrase means for him. Another family member thought this was just practical advice. You have to be your own biggest self-advocate. You can't let all of your validation depend upon people outside of you. You have to be comfortable with yourself and let self-confidence project from you for others to see it. That's more important than trying to use validations of others to create your own self-worth. Other family members thought this means you've got to get yourself together before moving on and being of use to others. And I agree with all of these points, and I understand where everyone is coming from, and I agree. So coming into my conclusion, I've definitely had some interesting revelations on how and why many of these projects interrelate, and how they relate to perseverance, and how I manage my time and my life. Some of these projects led me to dealing with grudges and resentments. Other projects made me realize just how short and special our lives can be. From all of my work, I've both appreciated and harbored ill feelings towards my strength of perseverance for choices that I've made. I also think I may hold grudges and resentments to some degree because I'm not able to completely forgive myself for the choices that I've made during my life. From all of this, I now know that these choices were the best choices I could make at the time, and we all have some regret over our choices, but need to forgive and feel compassion for the person we were when we made the choices and for the person that we are now. I also know that the most important thing I do with my time is to show my love and to support my family, as they're the best parts of my life. It's interesting where time management has taken me. Not so much managing time, but trying to be wiser about how I use and spend my precious time. Life is too short, and if I have 1,100 weeks left, I should use them to show love and appreciation to my family and friends. I should clear out the resentment and grudges and regrets, as they don't return anything good to my life, and they're a waste of precious time and energy. These are the things I'm working on and aspire to do. So I'll leave you with something the wise sages of the band Green Day once sang, which can totally be applied to time management in life. It's something unpredictable, but in the end, it's right. I hope you had the time of your life. Thank you very much.
This is very moving. This was really, a lot of self-revelation and discussion. And what a great family discussion to have. It's such a beautiful example that wise words can bring families together around discussions around such things. And that this is so different than sometimes families don't eat together, or sometimes when they eat together, they're spending time on devices and stuff like that. This is such a fantastic thing to do. How was it? How did you feel when the family was talking like this?
It was wonderful. It was nice to discover what their feelings were. It was nice to discover how we all agreed on things. And I think for them, it was nice to hear me talk about issues that I have, because generally, I probably don't discuss the issues that I have with them enough.
Hmm.
And they have their own issues, and it's nice to know that they're not alone in that.
Yes. And even sometimes what you said, especially being the man in the family, it's hard to be vulnerable. And that's very difficult to get love back if you don't feel vulnerable. If you're always used to projecting that way of being, which men, I have a very soft corner for men because we get put in these positions and we put ourselves in these positions of looking strong without saying, no, we need love too.
I'm, yeah, I mean, I especially like your comment about grudges. It is like drinking poison and hoping that someone else gets sick from it. And it's so true. And it's such a waste of time and energy.
It is. Libby says, amazing dance, so introspective, inspiring to be so strong in your vulnerability. That is absolutely the crux of what I think Libby just like summarized this whole thing. Oh, Rizwan says, Don, that was very meaningful and honest. Thank you. Yes, this is how we encourage others as well. So I think you will have a lot of people going home and thinking about what you said and how important it is to be like this with family members. So when we talk about modern definition of love, it has three parts. So Barbara Fredrickson, who is the researcher in love, she says, one, it's sharing of one or more positive emotions between you and another. Second is research shows when that happens, there is a synchrony between you and the other person's biochemistry and behaviors. So the hearts start to beat at the same rhythm, even if it's for a brief period of time. And third, there is a motive which goes both ways to invest in each other's well-being that brings mutual care. And that's where someone who becomes takes a little bit of risk at being vulnerable, it's amazing how it can change how people are relating to you. That was very good. Thank you very much. That was fantastic. Okay. All right. Now, after that introspective presentation by Dr. Don Morris, let's meet our next presenter. And our next presenter is Dr. Daniel Solano, and you heard his quotation already. He's a comprehensive ophthalmologist who loves to get excited with patients about their vision on their one-day post-op surgery day. He graduated from medical school at Nova Southeastern University in Fort Lauderdale in 2016 and finished his residency at Ohio University in Columbus, Ohio in 2020. He is the recent owner of an ophthalmology practice located in Port Charlotte, Florida, and a team consultant for Tampa Bay Rays Major League Baseball team. He has 4 kids and has come to this conference to learn how to get some of his time back to doing what he loves to do best, which is caring for patients. So take it away, Dr. Solano.
There you go. I gotta unmute myself first. All
No,
right, so how's everybody doing? I guess let's get some participation here. Let's see how everybody's doing so far. And I'm going to share my screen here. So I just had a quick thought about you talked about people connecting and their heart beating at the same time. And there is some research that shows a mother and a baby's heart can sync up, and it's usually the mother's heart that will sync, and also in a choir, people's hearts will sync up. So that was very introspective. And thank you, Don and Libby, for sharing your presentations. It was great. I enjoyed hearing that. So, all right. So this is my hometown. This is well, so the picture's being taken from Punta Gorda, and I cross that bridge every day into Port Charlotte. And so this is my home. I don't have to go to Hawaii to see the beach and sunset. So this is awesome. I can see it from here. And like Harjat said, I'm a recent practice owner, and so I have a lot to learn. And I've only been in practice for about 3 years, and I took over practice my second year out. And so it's been a fun journey. So I want to share with you guys a couple things as well. So I have no financial interest in time management, including but not limited to Timex, Rolex, and Casio. And so as I was preparing for this presentation, and if these are bad dad jokes, I'm sorry, but I guess because I'm a dad, every joke is a bad dad joke. In preparing for this presentation, I did what every good presenter would do, right? I would time myself and see how long that my talk would take me. So I went out and bought an awesome Casio on a long belt. And I put this around my waist, and I stood in the mirror and I looked at myself, and I gave my talk out loud, only to find out it was a waste of time. So I won't waste your time. Sorry, another bad dad joke for you guys. All right, so why did I choose to become a facilitator? So I thought about this, and I haven't given back much to the community, the medical community. I don't have any residents. There's no program nearby. So I thought to myself, I said, why not give back to the community and to my fellow physicians by doing this? But I ended up coming back learning the most, and so it was great for me. And I think everybody who does presentations know that they learn the most when they go through these things. So I feel like I learned the most by going through this. And so as I was thinking about time and time management, I wanted to look up the definition of it. And you might see some kids running through my room here. I'm trying to move. Sometimes you'll see kids running through that door. So if they do, forgive me. So when I looked up the definition of time, I found this definition, and quite honestly, it's a lot to wrap my head around. The indefinite continued progress of existence and events in the past, present, and future regarded as a whole. So, I mean, that almost gives you like an ice cream headache if you think about that for too long. It's like, what are they really trying to say? And then to even get a little more nerdy for you, 1 second is defined as 9 billion cycles of radiation of a cesium atom, 133 atom. This is stuff I've never even heard of, but I thought it was fun to at least look it up and to think what a second actually means. We all know what a year means, but what does a second actually mean? I don't think I could have produced this definition for my kids if I tried to. So, and I don't know if anybody follows the Marvel movies or Marvel episodes, but this is Miss Minutes from Loki. I gotta move my screen here, and so Loki was like really big into time, and so maybe this will connect with some people out there. All right, so the biggest take-home message that I was able to do from the pre-course work is I was able to pause and just stop for a minute what I was doing and see like what are my ideals and what am I doing to match up my ideals with my time, right? So where do I spend my time? Where do I want to spend my time? And does this line up? And obviously, where can I improve? And I think we all would agree that we really can't manage time. We can only manage ourselves. And we can't slow the Earth's rotation around the sun, right? We can't do any of those things, but I can change what I do. And that's been the biggest take-home message for me. And I think a lot of times we get frustrated in time management because we're doing things that really don't want to be doing, and our ideals and our goals aren't lining up with how we're spending our time. And this is something that came to mind. And sometimes it feels like we're lighting the candle on both ends, right? So we're trying to, do as much as we can, but in reality, we're only going to burn ourselves, right? So there was a comment in the in the chat a second ago about the mortal notch. But basically, to sum it up, is you basically take how many years of what you think your life expectancy is going to be, and you multiply that by 52 and get how many weeks. And so I just turned 38, so here it is. I burned up 1,900 weeks, and I think I have 2,400 weeks left, right? But in reality, I really don't know how many weeks I have left, as you all know. But what this activity at least did for me was it caused me to pause long enough to think, what have I done and what will I be doing, right? What's important to me in the past and what will I do to be going forward? So one of the movies, or one of the talks that was given, was Tim Urban, and this is a pretty popular TED talk, but this is his calendar. I think this is 90 years. So every box was a week in his life. And he argues that all of us are procrastinators to some degree or another. And that the hard part is that we procrastinate things that really don't have a deadline. So some of the examples he used was strengthening a relationship, exercise, a hobby, whatever it is that we're going to do for ourselves that really doesn't have a deadline. Things that do have a deadline, like graduating medical school or whatever it might be, we're pretty good at getting at least those things done. But the really important things really don't have a deadline. And one of the comments as I was listening to this TED Talk was that everything does have a deadline because eventually we'll all be dead. So I really like that. And something I kind of stumbled across was this movie. Let me just jump to it here. I'll get to it in a second. So another thing that I learned is, what am I filling my life with? Am I filling my life with meaningful things or just stuff? And so, where's that movie? There it is. So I just stumbled across this movie called the Minimalism movie. I don't know if anybody's ever seen it. I haven't seen the chat up, but let's see. We love kids. Thank you. So I don't know if anybody's ever seen this or heard of this, and you can chat away if you have or haven't. I'm just curious to see what people think or know. But basically, it's these two guys that go out on a journey. They were climbing the social ladder of success, and this is free on YouTube, by the way. And so they're climbing their ladders of success, and then they just come to this realization, like, what am I really trying to accomplish in my life? One of them actually just got a promotion, big raise, and he quit his job the day he got a raise because he just said, I don't want to be stuck in somebody's office, just really chasing the next thing to buy. And so it was pretty inspirational to me. And it was also, I watched it with my 11-year-old son, and it was inspirational enough to my son that that next day he packed up a bunch of stuff that he didn't really need and he donated it. And so I was like, oh, that was interesting. So one of the quotes that I shared earlier that Harjat shared was that money is really our time in disguise. And so if I think about where I'm trying to spend my time and my money, it's really, I'm exchanging my time for whatever it is that I buy. And back to my screen here. And so the biggest message and the biggest takeaway for me is that I really want my time to be focused on my kids and my family, right? I think this is going to be the most meaningful thing that I can bring to my life, and at least what I can pass on for the next generations to come. There is this life value calculator, and I can send it out to you guys if you want, but basically you can put in what you earn. And I was doing a little experiment with my son. My son likes to mow lawns, and so I don't think he's going to make this much money, but if you were to put this much money in there and how much time it takes you to get ready and after tax wages, thank you for that link for the movie. Like, what will it cost you? And so I put in my son really wants, he's 14, he wants a $800 brand new iPhone. He's not okay with his that's a little bit older. He wants a brand new one. And so if you punch this in, it'll take him 2.4 weeks of his time to get a new iPhone calculator, or a new iPhone with this calculation. And so part of what I'm trying to teach my kids is say, listen, you're going to exchange your time for what? And what does it have to show? And so hopefully my kids like to listen to their dad sometimes, even if I have bad jokes, at least they hear me out. So I hate spending a lot of money like at one time. So I'm one of those people like if I go to Costco and I spend too much, I'm like, oh, I have a regret. I got to return it the next day. And one of our recent big purchases were mountain bikes. Our youngest son is 7, and we love mountain biking, but we could never really do it as a family because he was always too young. So finally, he was just old enough where we got him a mountain bike and the rest of our family mountain bikes. And it really put in perspective. We went mountain biking on Labor Day, and it really put into perspective, was that purchase or was that way I spent my time to earn that money to buy him a bike, was it worth it to me? And I think it was. Just share with you guys a video of him riding this past week. I don't know if you'll hear the sound, but so this is my son, first time ever riding off-road, and quite honestly, I was worried about him. I don't know if you can hear it, but right here he says, "I don't need you, Dad. I got this. I got this." So I was so happy to watch him do that, and it was so worth my time that was spent to be able to share that with him. And so as I think about, where I'm going to spend my time to what I'm going to buy, hopefully I'm just not accumulating stuff, and I'm going around my house and I'm figuring out like what really do I not need? Every purchase I'm thinking about, how much time is this going to take me to get? Do I really need it? Do I not? And so I'm really trying to put that in perspective. And lastly, to finish off, I think you guys have probably heard this analogy, the rocks in a jar analogy. I mean, I won't go over the whole thing, but basically to sum it up, if nobody's ever heard it, is if this is the amount of time you have today, what can you put in there, right? So if you have rocks, you put in the most important things that you have first in the jar, and then you put in the pebbles, the things that you kind of have to do, and then lastly, the sand is the stuff that you might, you don't have to do, but it'll kind of just fit in there. And so a lot of things will fit in here if you do it in the right order. If you try to put all the sand first, all the rocks and the pebbles are not going to fit. And so I looked up this gentleman had an article, Rapid Start Leadership, and he talked about 11 things that we really don't talk about. And I'll just share 2 of them. The first thing he says the jar is already full. In this metaphorical exercise, we get wrapped up with trying to cram too much as will fit into the jar. But in reality, before we fill it up, it is full of air. The goal is not necessarily to fill the jar with and squeeze stuff all in to get the air out. We need room to breathe. Leave room for a quiet walk, some guiltless relaxation, some quality sleep, or a chance to be spontaneous. And the second thing he said was, you can dump out the jar. However you choose to fill this jar, that's not the end of the story. More like just one chapter. When life happens or circumstances change, it's okay to dump out the jar, take some time to reflect and start again. And so throughout this exercise, I've been able to stare at my jar and see, even though my jar really is, I'm inside my jar. And so really it's kind of scary because you're, a big rock going into your jar feels like a huge boulder of something you're trying to accomplish every day. And what's funny, and I really didn't plan this, as today I was going out to find some rocks in my yard. I found these little rocks and I completely forgot that my kids made me this monster rock and it says Dad on there. So they made it for Father's Day, and I'm like, what else do I do with a big rock? So I threw it out in the yard in our rock garden. And funny enough, it actually doesn't fit into my jar, but it just brought back to remembrance of how special my family is and my kids are. And I'm really trying to hope that I line up my time with what's important to me and my values, which would be my family first and foremost, right? My biggest rock that I have to take care of, even though if it doesn't fit in my jar, I'll find a way to get it in there. But if this were a commercial for Capital One credit card, they'd say, "What's in your wallet?" But the question I'll leave to everybody is, "What's in your jar?" Thank you.
Oh, hi, thank you. That was fantastic. And the perspective, and how Jana says she loves the analogy. So this is very, very good stuff. How did you apply your strengths?
So yeah, I can't remember my top 5. My top one was honesty, and
Okay.
yeah, it's a good question. So we had some issues at work. So I have a big staff. We have like 12 staff members, and I was trying to figure out what bothered me so much about the interaction. I think it all boiled down to honesty. And so, like you said, right, our strengths can be our weaknesses if we overuse them too much. And so honesty was one of my biggest strengths, at least in terms of that survey that we did.
How did you use it, or how did you put it into action? Did you get any chance to do that?
I had no, not necessarily. No, not at least for this presentation. No.
Okay. So I heard you were talking about, the mortal notch. What else did you pick from the list of activities to do?
So I did the email. So I would set a timer to send out emails. I think a lot
Okay.
of times you kind of sit down and you're going to do a bunch of emails, and basically what you taught us was to set a 20-minute timer, 21-minute timer to do the emails and be done with it.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times I sit down and I'm like, there's really no end in sight of how long it's going to go on for. And so that was a good exercise for me.
So tell me, how did that go for you? Tell us, share with us.
Yeah, so I went on vacation. I left the country for like a week and I came back to a ton of emails. And I really did think, I was like, this isn't going to be feasible. It'd take me a
Mm-hmm.
couple of weeks to get through all the emails that I missed. And
Mm-hmm.
just setting a timer, I started from the most important to the least important and was able to knock it out in a couple sessions.
Oh, so how did that work then? Like, what was the big learning for you in that? You see, so others can use it too.
Right. So yeah, just sticking to the timer because I mean I don't want to be stuck doing emails because then I'm probably not going to be as productive after 20 minutes, right? Once the 20 minutes passed, it's going to be, it's not going to be as enjoyable for me.
Okay, very good. So that was another activity. Tell
There we
us
go.
what other activity that you chose to do out of that list.
So what was the other one? So the mortal notch, I talked about that one, and then the take
Mm-hmm.
home messages.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I don't have the list in
In
front of
fact,
me.
the way you shared, exchanging money and time,
Hmm.
and we didn't even get into effort and identity, especially children would find it very difficult. Identity, I mean, they're still forming it, but
Hmm.
about effort, they have hard time. But money and time exchange, that the way you explained it was fantastic. I mean, every parent should be sharing this with their children. Oh, every adult should be sharing with themselves. So, but when you were looking at these early on, or when you tried doing them, did you see any barriers or challenges?
Yeah, I think one of them was the huddles.
Mm-hmm.
I know we talked about it, you and I, but doing the huddles was tough because it's hard to get our whole staff there at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't work every day. I'm only there half day sometimes. And but what I did do was did the praise afterwards,
Mm-hmm.
whatever they did well. And I think they
Mm-hmm.
liked that. Just yesterday, one of my staff more members showed a kind act. And it's funny enough that this staff member was a little rude to a patient and we got a bad
Mm-hmm.
review because of it.
Mm-hmm.
And the same day she was nice to a different patient. So I took it upon myself to say, hey, let's recognize at least what she's doing nice. And so
Mm-hmm.
we did a praise for her. So that was one of the activities we did was a praise for her.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. So praise, what other barriers did you see?
Mm. Sorry, I wish I had that list in front of me. I have my I gotta find it. I know I shared it with you with some of the activities that I did.
Mm-hmm. You see, share it with everyone. That's
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, I
So
don't
it's
have it in front of me.
okay. So, and maybe by the way, you can share in the chat later
Sure.
on. And then you shared a very wonderful, deep analogy of rocks. At this point, we are facing as a culture a little different problem, which is that um, we have way too many rocks, and it's very, very difficult. So if it was like we knew how many rocks we had, and that has become a much bigger problem. That's what Barry Schwartz, when he talks about there are too many choices. We
Hmm.
are the ones who are putting those in our lives. We don't have to get around that. This is
Right.
a very famous writing made popular by Stephen Covey. So Stephen Covey, in his Seven Habits, he talks about this rocks and jars, and that's a very, very famous story about that Stephen Covey. And now, other people like telling it too. But you used it fantastic. People are getting inspired by that. Yeah. So tell me, let's ask the people. What questions do you have for Dr. Solano? Love for Dr. Solano?
Love everybody.
Yes, no, I think you brought a nice, fantastic perspective. And 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 so and then you can look at the activities and you can share in the chat with others how that went. Yeah, great presentation. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, take care. Okay, so our next presenter is let me pull up. Okay. Our next presenter is Dr. Christina Mannion. And Dr. Mannion is an otolaryngologist. She has a passion for rural medicine and missions. She plans to spend the next year working in northern Maine and Alaska. Aspirational. Dr. Mannion's greatest accomplishment is being a mother to 3 active boys and celebrating 20 years of marriage this summer. Congratulations. She's also the founder and executive director of Shining Salt Foundation. You guys should check it out. It's fantastic, life transforming work she's doing for untouchables in India, especially girls. And we all say, you know, how little it takes to change their lives, but she is the one who's doing it. So take away, Dr. Mannion.
Okay, well, can everyone hear me okay? If not, let me
Yes.
know.
Yes, we can hear you.
So thank you for the nice introduction. And I enjoyed doing this. Sorry, I'm gonna get myself situated. So I think I kind of wanted to start off with saying why I wanted to do this. I was going through a big period of transition in and mine's just me talking, so you're just stuck looking at my face. I didn't do a PowerPoint. But I am going through a period of transition in my life where I was in just a big transition, right? And I resigned from my regular job, my real job as an ENT surgeon, and gave 90 days notice in May. And I decided with that transition, I wanted to pursue some things I'm passionate about, and I wasn't sure what that was going to look like. So I was open to optimizing myself, I guess we can say, was with when they asked for facilitators, I thought, why not? I can always learn something. So my 90 days and my end of my job is like the end of next week. So it's good timing. I also just kind of wanted to get more involved. I used to be really involved in SOMA and was really involved in the AOA, I guess before kids, pre-kids. And now I just want to give back because I love osteopathic medicine and I just love the gift of being able to do what I've been doing because I'm a DO. So I just want to get more involved, and I thought helping to be a facilitator might be a nice way. So hopefully I don't make you sleepy. So first we worked on the survey of revealing our strengths, and my top 3 were spirituality, number 1, honesty, 2, and kindness, 3. So hopefully I come across very honest and kind, I guess. The goal of the presentation, what I want you to understand from it, I guess, is how we use these strengths to do time management. One thing that we had in one of our discussions that I really took away from it at the beginning, though, was how sometimes your strengths can actually be burdensome. You can almost overuse them. And I found that for me was something I could work on and get better at not overusing my strengths. And I liked the personality test. I've never done really one before. I've done different types of gifts tests and things like that, but I think it was good. I think they're hard tests to take because sometimes you want to answer what you think you want to be like, I guess. But it was it was nice to use those to try to work through these projects. So I was just going to go through for a few minutes what time management activities I chose to help. I guess time management is good, but to create value in the time that I have. That's kind of the way I looked at it. Not like I actually feel like I'm pretty good organizer, and I feel like I actually manage my time well, but there was trying to get value in the time that I have was what my goal was, I think, when looking at the outcomes. So I chose high energy, high meaning. When I was going through a transition, I think I let some things go that keep my life stable. And one of the things that requires high energy, but is high meaning to me, may sound silly, but it's running. I've always been a runner and I haven't been doing it. So I realize I'm a kinder person when I run. And so I have a lot of things going on. And I think even running, I realize I don't listen to music ever. I just get my ideas out, my thoughts out, and I realize what's important to me. And I think I plan a lot and listen to languages. So I decided I would just start, I need to get back on doing that. Wanted to do 20 minutes a day, every day, just running, just to commit to doing that, which that's not a lot for me, I guess. So I was like, if I can just do 20 minutes a day. And so I started doing that and I have really enjoyed it. I didn't want to at the beginning, but that's a high energy. That takes a lot of effort to get out the door when I don't want to go. But it's given me high meaning. This project we've been doing all summer, I've realized how much I miss it and how important that is to me to keep me organized and sane throughout the day. So I've even been planning on now, after doing this for a few months, going to train for a marathon, because I guess I'm overusing that strength now. Anyway, so I'll be working through that, but I'm still doing the 20 minutes, and I feel like that took a lot of energy to do, but I feel like it's helped me with not being anxious, like getting my thoughts out while I run and just being by myself. So another thing I took out again was that quadrant box with the values of energy and meaning. And I just really enjoyed that. It was a good way for me to think and how I think about things. So I did the low energy, high meaning, because my whole goal of the project, like I was saying, was how to get more meaningful activities out of the time that I have, and not maybe managing time better. I do feel like I think I do okay like that at work and things, but something to me is it's really easy for me to read in the morning, and it has a lot of high meaning, but I've been kind of letting that go too. And I feel like when I start off the day better by reading or doing some people journal or do a meditation or something, whatever makes you start your day well. I'm that kind of person that likes to do something in the morning. And I'd kind of not been doing it daily, and I have been doing it for years. So I decided I need to get that back up, because for me, that's low energy. It's easy. I follow a set plan and high meaning. So I picked some two things that I do that were meaningful to me. And I decided, I don't think this really fits on anything that you suggested, but maybe if I don't think it fits in a different box, but like I did a daily gratitude practice, which I've never done before. Just when I was doing my prayer in the morning, I would write 3 things I'm thankful for, to remind me that even though this change is a big deal and what I'm getting ready to do, I'm very grateful for a lot of things, and like everything's going to be everything will work itself out. And so I'll write, I'm grateful that my kid hugged me before I dropped him off at kindergarten today, or it doesn't have to be anything big. And I've really enjoyed looking back throughout the days and doing that. And I've never done anything like that in my life. So I really enjoyed doing that. That was definitely easy for me. And I wouldn't say I do it every day, probably 5 out of 7 days. If I'm being honest, because that's number 2, right, for me. But I would say I write down these 3 things that I'm grateful for, and I don't dwell on the challenges in my life. There's challenges with starting a new nonprofit that I've done that I could let turn me away or make me not want to do it or something. Or there's always going to be challenges working with international things, and I just have to write down what I'm grateful for and keep putting one foot ahead so that I can do some goals I have. So I really enjoyed that. And then one thing I did is I do like the 1 breath meditation. I would find at work in my real job, sometimes I feel like I can get overwhelmed, just like all of us, or you might have a challenging patient interaction. One thing I personally struggle with is if like a patient's really mean to me. I think that hits me harder. And I don't know if it's because it's related to a strength of mine. Like, I just really am like, why, I don't understand why you're mean. Like, I have to go step away and just like take a breath. I did it today, actually. Yeah, someone was really mad that I was 20 minutes late. And I was like, well, but you didn't have cancer and the 2 people before you did. So I'm so sorry. But you don't say that, right? But so I stepped away and like just let myself be like not angry at them, but just let it go. So I've actually never really done that either. So stepping away and just giving myself a moment to just breathe was something. And usually I go in the audio booth to do that. And in case anybody needs a good quiet place to go, we have a lot of audio booths in our practice that aren't being used fully. So anyway, that's where I went. I've always been into yoga, and so that fit with me kind of a little bit of meditation. It's not something out of the blue that I just haven't done it a lot, but I enjoy doing that. And I think it was a good way for me to reset during the day. And I like that we have an empty audio booth. So one thing is just feeling overwhelmed sometimes when I have new projects. I know we all have a lot on our plate. I'm always a big fan of the list like you made, but I will overlist things. And so what I actually tried to do is just list like 3 or 4 things and not list all 10 things I need to do. And I would make a list of so this is the avalanche or snowball mindset. And so I would do the easiest ones first and then try to do the harder ones later. But I found I would put too many things on my list. So I tried to just do the top 3 that really needed to be done that day and then make a separate list of all the other ones that I could do if I felt like it. And I guess maybe looking at not such a long list helped me. So I think that's probably the most practical thing I did to help organize true time management. But it's just little things like getting licensures in different places and different things I'm working on in these different states. It comes with a lot of paperwork. So my computer's gonna die, so I'm gonna plug it in. So I think like just realizing what I had to do first with my priority was good. So what did I learn? I think I can overdo things. So I started small, like running for me 20 minutes a day is actually small. But I realized that getting back into it's been really helpful. And my strengths of kindness and honesty, I guess, are what makes me a sensitive person, which I decided is okay. That's who I am and how I'm wired. But maybe I just need to step away more often. And if I have patients who don't have those as their strengths or something. So I realize I'm better at taking care of myself when I like exercise, and specifically for me, it's long distance running and spending quiet time in the morning to like set my day on a good path. I think it makes me a better human being and just able to handle, different things that come our way. So I put, because my strength is kindness. I think sometimes, and you have to do your own thing. So this is just so specific to me, but I guess that's what our presentations are about. But someone put this on like an Instagram. And so I took a screenshot of it because I thought it fit me well. Like so sometimes your strengths can be detriment, right? And maybe for me, kind of standing up for yourself or something, or, but I took a screenshot of this and wrote it down. Like, you can be a kind person and still say no, prioritize your needs, disagree with people, be honest, challenge poor behavior, walk away, make mistakes, stand up for yourself, and protect your time and space. So I think sometimes those are good things to learn. Like, you can be a kind person and still be assertive in some of those aspects. But I also, when I did that one breath meditation, for me, I took it as an opportunity to like say, you can take a quote or a mantra, or, we use that word in yoga a lot. Or for me, it was like a verse from a scripture that I liked, but that's just from my background. But, people would have other things that maybe mean something to you. So this is what I would always say: whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. And that was like my mantra, that you might say. And so I do. So it helped me because it says to think about such things. And then it reminds me what I should be thinking about. If it's, if it's good and lovely and admirable, it should be something we should all be thinking about. So I guess that is not super long, but it was a good practice for me. I think I got back into some habits during my transition to help me not feel so overwhelmed with some of the transitions I was doing. And I think it was a good exercise. So I don't know if that's helpful to anybody, but that's pretty much what my presentation is.
Very nice. Thank you. I think it was helpful. Tell me, I'm asking people, tell us in the chat, was it helpful to you? People were, telling, great job. Yes, thank you. Love that mantra. Yes, great job. Great job indeed. In fact, people before you also talked about well-being and time management have an overlap. Research shows over and over and over again, gratitude done once a week, just once a week, for 3 weeks, has a prevention against anxiety and depression for up to 6 months. So yeah, they do all kinds of combinations, 5 times a week, 3 times a week. So you can, and every time you throw in gratitude, you'll get a signal. So people who are researchers, they know what signal means, which means you're gonna get it. It's last year in well-being that was the superstar gratitude. Yes, wonderful. Honor your strength to start something very new. So hard to do. Yes, that's right. Beginning is like everything, because then you can fly high. Gratitude and shortlist. Yes, thank you. Thank you. So I have a question for you. Tell us more about the foundation.
Okay. So it started with a passion. My desire to go into medicine started by living in India for a few months and working with one other girl. This was like in college. And so I've always wanted to give back because I feel like that's where I was grounded. Like that's where it's all started. And now I'm in a position where I can. So it's the short version is I started designing bags made by some women who were trained in a tailoring company. And I would sell the bags on this line, this company, Shining Salt. And then I felt like I wanted to do more because this company I work with in India, it's all Indian run. It's not run by Americans or any expats or anything. I just found them independently. They have a boarding school, and my passion is education. I think it gets people out of poverty. And so I just got my 501c3 authorization in July, so I can't quite start raising funds yet, but my goal is to help get child sponsorship for these kids to get through school, because typically it's not available to the untouchables or the Dalits, which is a horrible word to call anybody, but that's what it's called there in India. So I hope to make a difference in that aspect.
How are you using your strengths in this foundation at this point?
Well, I mean, spirituality is a big part of my life, and that is my top strength. So I think my faith is what's prompted me to do it. I guess that guides me lots of my decisions. And then just I think overarching, even someone without a faith background can understand that kindness leads to a lot of people, no matter what their background is, and just loving the people for who they are, the people in India and where they're from is the most important thing. You can't reach someone if you don't love them first.
Yes.
If you don't love the people you're trying to help, you're not going to get very far. So I think just love was in my top 5. So I think that just loving them, showing them that they're all human beings and deserve education. I think education is super powerful.
Yes. Brittany said that don't confuse my kindness or weakness. You see, isn't it a weird world we live in where kind people are seen as weak and cruel people are seen as strong? That's sort of amazingly weird and bad thing. And we have a comment, what you're doing is fantastic. It indeed is fantastic. So, okay. This is fantastic, and more strength to you. We need more of you doing more of this in the world. So that's it. It's gratitude enough. I'm grateful for you doing this. So, by the way, what part of India is it in?
It's in Andhra Pradesh, but it's in a really rural village.
Okay,
Mhm.
I see. And all rural India is the same. It's really amazing. So, okay, it is inspirational. Dr. Smith is saying inspirational. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mannion. Okay. All right. Well, now we go on to the last presenter of the day, which is Dr. Aslam, Dr. Rizwan Aslam. He is currently the interim chairman of Department of Otolaryngology at Tulane University School of Medicine. He's also the program director of the residency in otolaryngology. He was not done with one master's. He has three of them, one in medical education, one in business administration, MBA, and one in public health, MPH. He is associate professor of otolaryngology, neurosurgery, and plastic surgery at Tulane University, and an associate professor of plastic surgery at LSU School of Medicine. So welcome, Dr. Aslam. Take it away. It's yours. Nope. Sorry, I'm running late in a time management. Yes.
Sorry about that. Well, I know Dr. Singh was probably scared that I wasn't going to show up tonight. So I'm here. I looked at the chat numbers from the beginning to the end. We still have 88 users on the call, which is great. Congratulations to everybody for doing this on a Friday evening. I think so. The way I came across this, and by the way, there's a lot more to my life than a lot of these titles and different designations. I was really impressed by all the talks this afternoon, starting with Libby all the way through. I think it's really remarkable to see my private practice colleagues, my academic colleagues, families, and different transitions in our careers and where we're at. I think this is something that every one of us has struggled at to get to some point in our career and managing time. When I first heard about this course, it couldn't come at a better time for me as I transition into another leadership role at our institution. Really thinking that, I know how to manage time, I know how to send emails, and that was really just me using all my time. And it wasn't really using it appropriately, but it was getting things done. So oftentimes these are things that you send people via text or via email when you're running. This are things that happens. Sorry, I'm running late. Can I call you later? How many people get this when you get screened or ghosted by somebody when you call them, right? Are they busy? Are they not? Probably, but they're on their own time, right? In a meeting, anything urgent, this is one that we always send as surgeons as well, right? Something that you can get back to, and then you realize 2 days later, I haven't gotten back to them. With that said, Dr. Singh and I had discussed in one of our sessions the utilization of the acronym ASAP, right? Everybody uses ASAP, and many of us travel. In one of my travels, I was walking through the airport and stopped in one of the Hudsons and picked up one of those self-help books. And I bought it because I'm always a sucker. I love those books. I love the HBR books. And the first thing that I read in there was ASAP, stop utilizing ASAP. And the purpose of that really caught my eye. I didn't really even want to read the rest of the book. It was a small book because we overutilize ASAP, and it doesn't do anything but put an arbitrary time frame on something that you want done. So instead of instructing somebody, hey, please respond by X and Y time, please complete this task, or please help me, or whatever it is, by not defining the true time, even for others and for myself, I find that this utilization of ASAP can mean anything. So I stopped about 2.5 years ago utilizing ASAP. I give realistic times. I don't, if I'm asking somebody to complete a research project, I'm not telling them to come back next week with a literature review and presenting data. Give a realistic opinion, give a check-in, but give people a target. And I saw the increase in my own efficiency and others around me by utilizing other words beside ASAP, including targets. So that's just kind of my introduction. A couple of the things that I learned from some of the readings, again, I thought these articles were really spot on, the HBR articles, and we read a lot of this in business school, and the business world applies in many ways to medicine more than ever, I guess, now. And somebody else had quoted this earlier, but from the designing work that people love, and I was actually interviewing a candidate for a position today, And I just talked to him about, you know, getting back to loving what we do. It's a sad state, I think, for physicians in general, because many of us are consumed and overwhelmed by the non-surgical, non-medical aspects of our day-to-day jobs. And that's really turning people away from loving what they do. So these three simple questions: was I excited to work every day last week? I mean, I'm not going to ask people to answer this, but I can tell you probably there's many people on this call, including myself, who can probably answer this questions in a negative way. Did I have a chance to use my strengths every day? At work, do I get a chance to do what I'm good at and something I love? Right? Like, these are very practical and honest questions. The answers probably aren't as good as we think they are. So what about teams? You know, the residency program director, one of the things I preach constantly is teamwork. Workers who reported that they felt part of a team were not only 2.7 times as likely as others to be fully engaged, but also 3 times as likely to be highly resilient and twice as likely to report a strong sense of belonging to their organization. Excuse me. I found that very compelling. I mean, this is not rocket science, right? I mean, everybody tells you teamwork is critical, teamwork. You put it in your CV, you put it on your job application, you put it on your residency application. I'm a team player. But how many people actually engage in teamwork, right? Another buzzword that was probably a buzzword that was born in the 80s and has really been time tested, but something that we don't engage in. Another thing I talked to one of my providers today about. And finally, this is another important point that I found from this study. Data from the Mayo Clinic reinforces this finding and suggests that 20% is a useful threshold. Its research into burnout in doctors and nurses suggests that if less than 20% of your work consists of things you love to do, you are far more likely to experience physical and psychological burnout. Intriguingly, loving more than 20% doesn't seem to net much increase in resilience. A little love of what you do at work goes a long way. Excuse me one second. That was my wife. Sorry about that. So, you know, it's really important here to pay attention and really take a minute to reflect. Other things that people talk about are mindfulness. I've tried to incorporate mindfulness into my life in many ways through Dr. Singh's pathways and things that we've talked about. Even surgical mindfulness. You know, when I'm operating now, I try to block out everything else that is stressing me and focus, whether it's a facial nerve dissection, a free flap, tonsillectomy, whatever it is, and focus and appreciate what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. And I found that loving and trying to get back to why I became a otolaryngologist has been really meaningful for me. So I found that article very important. The second article that I also found was important that was my fixation on time management almost broke me. And this was a really sad and tough article to read in many ways. But one of the things that came out of there, however, the most impactful and energizing use of time comes when we view time as a symbolic choice between the meaningful and the meaningless. So they were comparing the subjective and the objective findings of time and not really defining it as, you know, something defined from 10 to 10:30, but looking more at time at what the meaningful purpose of what you're doing during the time and not quantifying it so much, but actually qualifying it. So another really neat article that you should all read and gain something from. So looking at the Institute on Character, at first when I saw this, I was a little bit triggered because I thought it said the VA. Anybody who works at the VA, I thought this was another VA TMS training that I had to do. So I was like, oh my God, another VA thing. But I love the VA. I work at the VA. I love my veterans, but I thought it was VA, but it's VIA. So, and I was surprised when I took my test, you know, kindness, love of learning. I mean, I do love learning. I think education has become one of my hobbies in many ways, but also it came at a significant toll. You know, I mean, there was a lot of time that I expended in that process, but it certainly was one of my strengths. So I felt that was fairly accurate. What I learned about myself through this was through some of the movies. I haven't really gotten a chance to sit down utilizing time management to make time for a lot of the movies. This is my first time being a facilitator, but I did find that this was very fascinating, and it gave me a lot of insight into my own characteristics of how I'm going about things at work as well. One of the areas that time management comes into play is with email. And I thought this was a very practical part. There's two kinds of people in this world. There's me on the left. I'll never have a new message. I'm always checking my emails. And then there's somebody else on the right who has 13,600, you know, whatever this is, 136,770 emails. And people just They don't care. You know, they keep sending emails. They ignore them and they're fine with it. I'm kind of OCD. I'm the person on the left, right? This is many of us up at night before we go to bed, checking it, hoping that there's some breakthrough email coming in the middle of the night. Somebody's awake, sending you something breathtaking. It doesn't come in. First thing you wake up, get back on your iPhone and you're checking your emails, right? We are all victims and slaves to our iPhone and slaves to our emails. I'm talking about myself in particular. So I really tried to incorporate a couple of things about Dr. Singh's lessons, and that was tame the inbox. I've actually, since I've learned about this, I've been preaching this and trying this in our own small group at work 3 times a day, no more than 21 minutes each time. I have found that this is really tough, especially when you're in leadership positions, because you don't want to miss something. Why didn't you respond to my email? But reality is you have to be able to control your time. Otherwise, you will feel like you are being snowballed or avalanched, et cetera. So I found that this was a very practical thing to incorporate. And I'm going to keep these very, to the point on things that I felt were useful for me. Stop the outbox mayhem, only 6, end of message. So I've been utilizing these too. And I actually told Dr. Singh, and he challenged me with this. And I've been incorporating this into my life. And I actually go back and forth now with my business administrator utilizing a lot of these. I just, this afternoon sent out another 10 emails. And here's an example, right? Nothing in the email itself. There were some worker status changes that I need to take care of. So I just put, great, thank you so much. I approved the changes, end of message, done. That was it. Didn't waste a lot of time. She appreciated it, communicated, close the loop. So I found that this is really an awesome tool. It's almost like a text message, but it's an email. It addresses everything. I'm done. I'm out. Keep me out of the email chain. So I thought these 6 things that you can do, I think are very, you can save a ton of time with this. Huddles. I also thought this was really beneficial too, because there's many people in our workforce, everybody from our executive secretary, all the way up to the business administrator, the non-physician side of people who needed to feel that they were part of the team. And this goes back to the teamwork. I started huddles and it has been a tremendous benefit to all of us. Everybody's on the same page. We look a week out, we look a month out, and we talk about, hey, what is coming up next week? Do we have interviews? Do we have this? Do we have that? And this has been a tremendous asset for me. I mean, I could see this being incorporated in the clinic. I'm using this in my academic office at this time, but I'm starting to incorporate it in our clinic as well. Forecasting always helps. We all have surprises. Mitigating surprises, I think, can be done by utilizing huddles. 1 breath meditation. This is awesome. This is probably one of the best things that I got from this. And I know Dr. Singh was talking about this earlier. So I kind of Googled it and saw what other people were talking about 1 breath meditation. I started playing the guitar. It's awful. You probably would leave the Zoom chat if I started playing my guitar. But somebody said, as in musical training, it is often helpful to practice simple, basic exercises to develop stability, clarity, and flexibility. And she said, one that I have found helpful is 1 breath meditation. This is good to do anytime, but it is particularly helpful when you are feeling very agitated or very dull. So before I go into a case, I do 1 breath meditation at the sink. I go into the OR, I do the timeout, I do another 1 breath meditation. And I try to tell my residents to do the same thing. Let's forget about what's happening to patient XYZ on the floor. Take a deep breath. This is a new time to re-engage and focus on what we're doing. I found this to be very practical. Thank you, Dr. Singh, for that. Finally, this is one I struggled with. I think talking about our own mortality is very hard. I think talking about it to my 4 kids, particularly, my 6-year-old. And I talked to Dr. Singh about this, and Dr. Singh has experience in child psychiatry, and I'm still working through this one. But this resonates very, unfortunately, in a very difficult manner with me, because I lost my brother 2 years ago, who was 46, to GBM. And I still remember the day I went to see my brother in New York City, and he came out of his bedroom and he said, Riz, they gave me 2 years to live. So literally my brother had a mortal countdown that he had to live by. He ended up living 1 year. And I really wish that he had the opportunity to do something like this. And we tried to, but also tried to maintain positivity. So this is something that I struggle with. I think the reality is that life is, you can estimate, but you really don't know how long that countdown is going to be. You hope it will be the average age of a male or a female in the United States, 78, 82, whatever the numbers are. But the reality is you don't know how long that countdown is going to be. So I think having a countdown and really just treating all those moments, I'm not going to get into cliches and so forth, but just really, treating every moment you have. But this is the part that really made me focus a little bit more on my family and taking time out for my kids and my wife. The rest of the stuff was good for work in many regards, and I probably should implement some of that in my life. And I'm trying. I'm kind of a newbie to this program, but I think many of these tools are doable. But anyway, that's kind of where I'm at in my life. I do think that this is a pretty cool opportunity. There's definitely a lot of people on here on for a Friday night. I talked to my nephew, who's a resident in New York City, and I told him, hey man, I'm working with a life coach, and he thought it was the coolest thing in the world. So the millennials are going to be really impressed if you tell them that you're working with a life coach and doing this. So Dr. Singh and the college, I really appreciate it, and everybody else who presented, and thank you for being here. Short and sweet. I know it's getting late to the end of the evening, so I'm gonna end on that.
No, thank you very much. This is again very moving, very personal. Isn't it amazing you and others have felt inspired to share all this? It's like some kind of air got created in all this time, an environment or a place or a space where people are feeling safe to share this, and because we don't do this. Yes, so people are saying thank you, great job. And it's very hard to do mortal notch. It is very hard to do. And it's something that we are not built for. You see, that's why we, put it away. For example, one of the most so this is a philosophical question, so I didn't bring it in because I always try to bring in evidence-based questions, evidence-based things. But Camus, Albert Camus, one of the biggest philosophers of last century, his core question was, the first question you should always answer is why you shouldn't go and kill yourself right now. But you see, that is a philosophical opening. And thank you for so much for sharing all this. Let me ask you something. When you were doing this, what inspired you to share this with so many other people?
Specifically the mortality.
Seems like you talk to a lot of people about what's going on. So what inspired you?
I think because, the reality is we all think we're, that we are on a pathway that is, that is a template, and it's a textbook life that we live. But reality is the unexpected is what's going to catch up to us. And I think the minute that you come too comfortable in life and you don't appreciate what you have, that's when you're going to get knocked down. So I think for me, it's somewhat cathartic to talk to other people about it, because that's a reality. And I just think that, like you said, I mean, the purpose of our lives are to love those around us, take care of each other, be awesome to our colleagues. I mean, what's there to lose?
Yes.
So I personally, that's something that my brother instilled in me, was that you got to live every moment of your life. And I'm glad he did that before he passed away at a young age. So I don't know. Hopefully it'll help somebody. I guess that's the other reason you do it.
No, I think, and you said something, you're doing one breath meditation during surgery. And, we talk about lots of these things, but how far is surgical? And I didn't ask it from other people who are teachers as well, but you're a teacher. So let me ask you, how far is surgery from incorporating this into part of a procedure itself?
It's far. I think doctors hate timeouts in general. I think the reality is that we should appreciate them, because that very 30 seconds can save a lot of catastrophes for the patient. But I think it also, I think a deep breath, and I call it surgical mindfulness. I try to relabel this in my own way when I started reading a mindfulness book around the time my brother passed away, and I try to incorporate that into the OR. One breath meditation is essentially the same thing, but
Mhm.
And mindfulness, if you look at it, it's really appreciating everything in that moment, right? So whether it's doing surgery, dissecting a nerve, operating on a retina, whatever it is that you do, appreciating the anatomy, appreciating why you're there, and appreciating the impact it has on the patient. That's what I really gathered about mindfulness and what it means to actually be a surgeon. And I think many of us, we just go in, we're,
Yes,
got to get
yes.
home by noon and you're done. You're like, what the hell did I just do? You don't remember. And I think if you're going to be in teaching in a teaching environment, it's very helpful to, if you're going to preach and teach people, then you can't expect them to be mindful about what they're doing if you're not yourself.
I think what you just said is so important to remember. I'm going to transcribe it anyway because we're recording it and transcribing it. Did you hear what he said? Which is that appreciating what you're doing is going to bring meaning. So when we're talking about bringing 20% of time to be meaningful or purposeful or that you love in a day, what he just said, Dr. Aslam, is, okay, how about you appreciate it? And then it becomes meaningful by you appreciating it. How about you increase the amount just by doing that we are able to do that? And if we just piggyback on what Dr. Mannion said, I'm grateful that we can do this. So the combining gratefulness with appreciation or savoring in a way, in that sense. So it's a mind activity. It's not like somebody else is going to come from the outside and make things meaningful for us. So you said something so deeply profound just now. Overall, what's your sense of how did your time management shift objectively or subjectively?
Could you repeat that 1 second, Dr. Singh?
So how did your time management shift?
So I would tell you this morning, when I started my morning, I got out of bed, checked my email. I had 3, and they were all the useless ones that everybody else probably in this room got. Something about this opportunity, this drug, that drug. So nothing good. Got my day started. Talked to a colleague for an hour, started my clinic. By 10:30, 25 emails. Took a minute, tried to get through as many as I could, got back into the clinic scene. Wasn't able to check my email. By 3 o'clock, another 25 emails. So of substance of those emails, probably 20%. 20% need to be addressed by the end of the day. The remaining could have been addressed over the weekend or by Monday. But I felt compelled to at least get back to, people that had some pressing needs. So overall, it's gotten better. I think I'm still struggling in many regards with time management. But I think implementing some of these, minimizing feedback, constant feedback circles, I think is going to help me. I think that also just recognizing that everything doesn't have to be done right away is something that I need to work on, and that's been helpful. So it's going to get better. I'm going to work on it. I think these tools will definitely help. And I don't know really much to say, except I got work to do, Dr.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you very much. So let's give loud applause to all our presenters today, Dr. Smith, Dr. Morris, then we had Dr. Solano, then Dr. Mannion, and finally Dr. Aslam. And they worked very hard for 2 months, trying these new things with new perspective. You see, that's where sometimes some of the things that are as old as the hills, now we have to find evidence for and see which ones are more effective and which ones are not. So we didn't talk too much about putting other things down. That's not our job here. Yeah, so thank you. Thank you. People are saying this is all great. Yes, thank you. Thank you all very much. So, by the way, this concludes our formal program for today, but we'll hang out if you want to hang out. What a wonderful group. Yes, so inspiring. It is inspiring to me a lot. So tomorrow morning, so we have about 10 hours between now and tomorrow. So please have a nice dinner, have a nice sleep, take care of yourself. So we will be eating, like I showed you, this citrus. So mandarin and clementine, they go very well. But I know Dr. Graining is partial to the grapefruit, so that's fine too. So I think, and bananas go fine too. And by the way, overall, this works with any food because it's learning to savor food to improve the quality of the time you spend doing things which sometimes we just do mindlessly. So, so next is that you can meditate on these 3 questions when you go. What did you learn today? What felt easy and what inspired you? That's it. So good night for today. I'll see you tomorrow morning.